My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet very strategic choices that all of us can make in order to become the very best version of ourselves. Today in the studio is my dear friend Kathy Wilhelm, where we're actually going to talk about a few of those choices that seem like they would be annoying, situations that seem like they would be frustrating, things that seem to be really, really hard and inconvenient, if I may say so. And yet we can maximize and utilize those things for becoming the better version of ourselves. I think you'll like this episode, so listen in. Kathy Wilhelm, it's always great to have you here in the 3 Words podcast studio. My friend, my colleague. In many ways, you are my mentor. You have taught me so many things over the years that we've known each other, and I know our viewers and listeners who have tuned into our episodes and our conversations have been extremely blessed. And so thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me. It is always a ton of fun to sit around this little table.
And we even joked about off camera, like this is going to be a fun episode. But before we go there, maybe share with our viewers and listeners who maybe don't know you as well, a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am a business owner. I'm headed towards 37 years of business with my sister, which is an interesting dynamic. We have a photography studio, and I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am a best friend. I am a gardener, and I am a Christian. And that part ties it all up in a bow. And so I wear a lot of hats, and I care a lot about a lot of people, and that's why this episode today, I think, intrigued me, and I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, and I hope that our viewers do too.
Well, we got to go there then. What are the 3 words for today, Kathy?
Maximize drive time.
So I'm going to jump in and then let you think a little bit about why this is important to you. But I was excited to hear the episode because obviously I don't even choose the episodes anymore. The production team does and says, here's the episodes, here's your guests, get ready. You know, in the next couple of weeks, you'll be having these conversations. But I love my drive time. Yeah. I only have a 7-minute commute from my house to my day job. But I make sure as I design my week, I think that's episode 71. Maybe it's Design Your Day.
Tune in.
Tune in. But as I design my day, as I design my week, I have, if I'm in town, 10 short drive times. And I can decide in advance who I'm going to call. And even if they don't answer, I get to leave a voice message, and I get to leave a blessing or a word of encouragement or, hey, I'm thinking about you. And there's really significant things I can do when I'm behind the wheel of a car.
Yes, exactly. I feel like we need to throw this disclaimer in the beginning that we want everybody to drive safely. We are not, promoting distracted driving.
So not watching movies as we drive.
No, exactly. But then that made me almost automatically stretch this to all the other times in our day, in our week, in our month, when we're waiting, when there is downtime, and how that can be so frustrating in a day or a week, right? When we have these gaps and we're waiting on somebody to show up, or we're waiting in a waiting room. But those can actually become golden gifts if you pack your suitcase right and are ready to utilize them whenever they happen. And even more of a gift, right, is if those happen on a routine basis. Just like you plan your drive times, we can stack habits that we know we're going to have this downtime. So we have decided to put something on top of it. And all of that can maximize growth. We can grow in relationship. We can grow in connection, like you're talking about with scheduling folks that you want to stay connected with in those 10-minute drives. I've never been that lucky. I've never had a 10-minute drive. It's always been 30, 35 minutes for me, so I've got more time. But that is more gift as I think about this. And also scheduling time for introspection. Like how many of us don't regularly schedule? I know that you do. I know you schedule time to think.
Yeah.
But there are so many times that people don't. They waste those moments when they could be scheduling it for really some great time to just stop and pause and think. So it's not always about packing it in, right? Sometimes it's about taking the breath.
I'm going to hit pause on my conversation with Kathy right now to invite you to share this with a friend or a family member. There's lots of creative, very practical things that we can do to turn those times that seem inconvenient and difficult into gifts of gold, as Kathy has talked about. Now back to our conversation. And I think it's about being intentional. So let's talk about drive time. Obviously, we can talk about some of the other little pieces and parts and margins in our day, but we spend a lot of time, for many people, traveling. So whether it's on a subway, or maybe it's in an Uber, or maybe it's in your car, or maybe it's on a plane.
Yep.
I guess our encouragement to our listeners and viewers would be, just be intentional about it.
Absolutely.
If you're going to watch a movie on the plane, decide, I'm going to watch a movie on the plane today, or I'm going to read this book, or I'm going to work on this project. For me, if I am intentional, whatever it is, whether it's, I'm going to take some time and think. I have a client right now in Columbus, Ohio, who never pulls out a book, never watches a movie, never does anything on plane rides, and he travels on many plane rides, but he uses that time intentionally to simply think. That is his thinking time. So when we are traveling from one place to another, that we would use that time intentionally to maybe connect with people, as you said. Maybe it is to listen to a podcast, learn and be educated. Maybe it is to think or problem solve. But I love the intentionality of being en route to something and actually using that time. And like you said, it's not to get more done. It might be just to simply pause.
Right.
I just don't feel like it's probably the healthiest that some people say, I'm just going to turn on the radio full blast so I don't have to think. I think there's a time for that.
Yep.
So even if I'm going to listen to the radio and I'm traveling, I'll say, for the first, especially a longer trip, I'm going to take until I get to this particular city, I'm just going to listen to the radio, or I'm going to listen to Spotify. But then I'm going to begin to call these 6 people that I've already pre-planned that I'm going to call. So you obviously were intrigued by this conversation. How do you use your drive time?
Okay, so this is where I do true confession.
Okay.
Okay, so I was, before I started work with you and D&B coaching, I was the crank the music up loud and drive, because I was driving for 35 minutes. And it was kind of a mind-numbing space for me, right? Because I was headed from one life to another, right? From home to work. And I used that to just kind of zone out a little bit. But then I started to work with D&B coaching, and I found some podcasts that I knew I wanted to fill myself up with so that I had more to pour out to other people, including one called 3 Words. So I intentionally turned the radio off. And I intentionally have 5 podcasts that I listen to religiously in that 35-minute space, twice a day, every day. And so learning can also be one of the things that goes on the list. I know a lot of people enjoy and tune into podcasts now, but I'll tell you the really great thing about that is after about 6 months, I noticed that I thought differently. And I noticed that I responded differently. And I noticed that I, at age 62, am growing because I am investing that time to move forward, to think about deeper perspectives, to be thoughtful, and to learn. So if I can do it at 62, think about how many people at different ages and stages can learn and grow and be better. So again, to see that as a gift where we can grow and learn and change. And I have experienced that personally, and I'm better for it. Now, I wouldn't even think about turning on the music at that point.
See, I had to ask. I was thinking as you were sharing about this, it's fascinating, but do you ever miss the music? Do you ever miss that time?
Sometimes I tune into the quiet. Sometimes I don't play sometimes I am drained, I am tapped between one of my 2 roles. And so then I have learned that quiet space is super important. That quiet space to think instead of listening and pouring in. Sometimes I just need to be and process. But even then, I would not think about turning the music on. I listen to music in my meditation time in the morning, some of those things as background. But no, I would never think about turning that on again because it has been so impactful for me. So that's why I think this. I think that's why this triggered for me.
Well, and I think again, we're not talking about utilizing drive time. We're actually using the word maximizing drive time. So we're not saying to people who are listening to music or maybe are doing something different that isn't educational or deeply connecting to other human beings. It's not an issue of wrong. It's not even an issue of good or bad. It's better and best. I'm curious, do you ever talk on the phone to people during that time, or is it mostly just you use it to actually...
I used to use it to talk on the phone. Okay. Sometimes I do if I have somebody that I want to connect with. I use waiting room time more for that, to be honest. If I know there's going to be a 20-minute wait, I'll let them know I'm here, but I'll step out in the hall and I'll call a friend.
Okay.
I use some of that wait time that way. And I always try, again, to stack something great on top of something that's not so great, and suddenly it becomes a gift.
When I love that you're using the term that the time that is in transition is a gift. It's interesting. Some people despise airports. I love airports. And I've inquired about people. Why do you hate? I hate traveling. I hate airports. And the reason is because they view airports as simply something to get through, something to survive, because it's on the way to the destination. Like, I'm trying to get to my vacation. I'm trying to get to Thanksgiving with my family. I'm trying to get to, but then we miss, and again, I can't help but talk about it because I've written a book on it and we did a podcast on it, but to be fully present in that transition time, it ends up being so life-giving, whether that is interacting with people around you. For you, it's listening to podcasts. For me, it's having conversations with clients or even close friends as I travel, particularly my longer trips. I look for people are like, oh my gosh, that's a 5-hour drive. You might want to fly on a plane. I'm like, no, 5 hours is perfect. I can load up 10 conversations. I put it through Bluetooth, so I'm not looking at my phone. It's on the seat next to me, but I'm just talking. But I also, and if I may, and my producer's going to hate me for saying this because you have to throw this up on the Spotify as a clip, but another podcast is learning to talk to yourself. I love to use some of that time just to talk out loud. Michael Brown, there's a few things I'd like to say to you today. Or here's a few questions I have for you, Dr. Brown. I just love to kind of tease out, because sometimes to talk to myself, I think we spend far too much time listening to ourselves and not enough time talking to ourselves, telling ourselves the truth, unpacking things out loud as though there's a friend. And obviously we're both Christians, and so we can invite God into those conversations. So prayer doesn't need to be this weird mystical thing where we close our eyes and use all these weird words that we typically wouldn't use in conversations with friends and family. But we're just talking to God, talking to ourselves. And so I like that time as well, just to kind of, because for me, introspection, I need to be talking it out. It's when I start thinking that my mind starts wandering, but if I can start verbalizing those things, that's how I maximize my drive time and use those spaces in between, as you talked about, margin. So waiting rooms, I'm guessing lines at grocery stores.
Yes.
Time in the car, time in the plane, airport. Are there other places where you're like, yeah, I want to really maximize that time?
As
you garden.
I do garden, and I do maximize that. That is where you might catch me talking out loud in my garden a little bit, Michael Brown, because that is where I do a lot of processing and spending some individual time. The thing that I love about what you said earlier is that everyone, right, has their own individual choice on how you utilize it, and that the intentionality is the most important thing. For me, it's learning, but it may not be for somebody else. How you use that gift is so individualized, but the intentionality of it, that's where you really capitalize, right, on the gift. And that part is more important than where the space is in your day. You can find that, right? As you look through your day, you said, oh yeah, these are the spaces and places where I might be able to grow, change, move, use that in a way.
I like how you've reframed the conversation and expanded the conversation. You expanded the conversation beyond the windshield. You've reframed the conversation from, oh, now I have to just put up with this space or put up with this distraction or put up with this weight, to it's a gift. This pause, this slow down in the traffic, this what we would consider to be an inconvenience is now a gift. Imagine if we reframe. Imagine not only reframe, but also enlarge, even as you have described. So good. I've enjoyed this conversation. Any final words for our viewers and our listeners today, Kathy?
It is a gift for you to go through your week and find those spots and places where you might be frustrated and irritated by the wait. And then you can repurpose that into gold. Do you want to learn? Do you want to connect? Do you want to build relationship? Do you want to spend some time with yourself to understand and know yourself better? You have those and many other choices, but the intentionality of it is the important thing, right? And the possibilities are limitless. But when we choose to stack it and know in advance that we have this toolbox that we can pull out whenever there's a wait in the car, in the airport, wherever it is, that's good stuff. And we will be better people because of it.
Well, you make me a better person, Kathy. I'm so glad that you're in the studio today. And I know I'm not the only one blessed by our conversation. I hope our viewers and listeners are as well. So thanks for being with us. And of course, you'll be back here soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Michael.
As always, we are so thankful here at Three Words Podcast that you would spend your time with us, investing and trusting us with your very precious time. There's only 168 hours a week, and you would spend a few of those minutes with us here at Three Words. If you want to continue to deepen your connection with us, can I encourage you, even invite you to go to dmbcoaching.com/subscribe, where you can actually receive our monthly newsletter, where you can get some more content, learn more about our coaching team, learn behind the scenes what's happening at Three Words Podcast, and even get some really practical tips in regardless of your season of life and all the different stations of your life in order to grow and evolve and become your better version. With that said, it's always a pleasure being with you, and we'll see you in a few weeks.